each one gone for a different reason. Each one carrying a story most people have never heard. The last one was abandoned twice, 100 years apart. Town 1, Kensico, Westchester County. If you live in New York City or Westchester, there is a decent chance you are drinking water right now that flows over a drowned town. That town is Kensico, and most people have never heard of it. It was a quiet little farming community, about 200 people, a train station, churches, hotels, the kind of place that feels permanent simply because it is so ordinary. But Kensico had this bizarrely chaotic history for such a small town. In 1882, a store owner named Albert Montfort was found murdered in his shop, an axe the apparent weapon, and nobody was ever caught. That case is still the oldest unsolved cold case in Westchester County history. George Washington used the area as a base of operations during the Revolutionary War. Circus animals apparently escaped at some point and terrorized the village. It was like the place was a magnet for the strange. Then, New York City decided it needed the valley for a reservoir. The village was condemned, cleared, and burned. By 1917, the water had risen over everything: the houses, the roads, the site of that murder that was never solved. All of it, gone. No vote, no appeal, just the letter, and then the cruise, and then the water. At least Kensico went quietly. The next town spent 200 years refusing to go anywhere, and even after they forced everyone out, the people kept finding their way back. Town 2, Doodletown, Rockland County. Doodletown is inside Bear Mountain State Park, 45 miles north of the city, and unlike most places on this list, you can still walk through it. When you do, you are walking through driveways that lead to nothing, stone steps that go nowhere, and foundations the forest has been slowly pulling apart for over half a century. It feels less like a ruin and more like a place that simply forgot to finish disappearing. People lived here from 1762, when a Huguenot family named June bought land in the valley, all the way through the 1960s. 2 centuries of the same families, the same names on the same land. At its peak around 1945, about 300 people called it home. 2 churches, a school, small farms. The same June family that first settled the valley was still there 200 years later when the state finally forced everyone out through eminent domain in 1965. And here's the detail that stuck with me. The cemeteries are still there, still maintained, still accepting new burials from the descendants of former residents. The town is gone, but the dead keep coming back. There are over 30 historical markers now guiding hikers through where 70 homes used to stand, which means Doodletown has more signage as a ghost town than most living towns have on their main streets. The next town got no such ceremony, no markers. It just slowly ran out of reasons to exist, and the last thing left standing is a single crumbling building in the middle of the woods with no town around it. Town 3, Jayville, St. Lawrence County. The only real proof Jayville ever existed is a crumbling railroad station standing alone in the trees off Jayville Road in St. Lawrence County. The tracks long gone, the platform completely overgrown, the building losing its argument with gravity one winter at a time. Drive out to find it, and the roads stop having names before you get there. The town started as an iron mining community in 1850, got a real boost when the Carthage and Adirondack Railroad arrived in 1886, and became a proper little stop for a while. Churches, a school, a post office, a few hundred people building lives around the ore in the ground. Then the mines played out. Better deposits got found elsewhere, and the sawmills that tried to keep the place going just could not hold it together. Nobody made a decision to erase Jayville. It just got quieter, year by year, until there was nothing left to stay for. In 1914, someone tried to pump out the flooded mine shafts and reopen them, spent years watching the water pour back in as fast as they could pump it out. Eventually, fire came through and finished what time had started. By 2000, the population was officially 0. Jayville faded with no single moment you could point to. The next town had the opposite problem. One very specific moment, a promise signed by George Washington himself, and then 170 years later, it was broken. Town 4, Elko, Katonah County. In 1794, the United States signed the Treaty of Canandaigua with the Seneca Nation, guaranteeing their land rights in plain language. The United States would never disturb the people on those lands. President Washington signed it. It was not ambiguous. 170 years later, they built a dam anyway. The Kensico Dam project on the Allegheny River flooded a valley the Seneca had called home since long before any treaty existed. It displaced more than 600 Seneca people, put roughly 10,000 acres of reservation land underwater, and forced the relocation of multiple ancestral cemeteries, though not all of them made it. It also meant dissolving Elko, a small township of around 125 residents that had existed since 1890. In 1965, the remaining residents of Elko voted 13-1 to dissolve their own town. 13-1. That vote is one of the quietest, most devastating documents in New York history. Every September, the Seneca hold a Remember the Removal ceremony. Elko itself is barely remembered at all. Most towns on this list were erased by accident, by infrastructure, by the indifferent logic of engineering. The next one was erased by its own success. And that is where it gets genuinely strange. Town 5, Tahawus, Essex County. Tahawus was abandoned twice, nearly a century apart, and the reason it failed the first time is the exact reason it came back the second. Iron ore was discovered here in 1826, deep in the Adirondacks, near the headwaters of the Hudson River. A real village went up to support the operation. A blast furnace, a grist mill, a sawmill, charcoal kilns. For 3 decades, it was a functioning community. Then it collapsed. The remote location made everything ruinously expensive, and the ore had a stubborn impurity that the technology of the era simply could not remove. In 1857, the works shut down and the village was left standing, empty, for nearly 100 years. The impurity in the ore was titanium dioxide. In 1940, with wartime demand for titanium skyrocketing, the site roared back to life. A new village of 84 buildings went up, the federal government built a railroad in, and for the next 5 decades, they pulled 40 million tons of titanium from those mountains. Then, in 1989, the mines closed again. Everyone left again. Same place, 2 centuries, abandoned twice. One more thing. In September 1901, Vice President Roosevelt was staying at a cabin in Tahawus when the news arrived that President McKinley had been shot and was dying. He rode 35 miles by buckboard wagon through the dark to the nearest train station to reach Buffalo and become president. That cottage still stands. Not many people visit it. Tahawus refused to stay gone. The next town has the same stubborn quality, except its version of coming back plays out at the bottom of a reservoir every time there is a drought. Town 6, Delta, Oneida County. Delta was a small farming community in Oneida County built around a grist mill on the Mohawk River, with every reason to just keep going. In 1903, the state approved Erie Canal improvements, and the engineers decided they needed a reservoir right where Delta was sitting. By 1912, the water had risen over more than 200 buildings, homes, a church, the mill. Most graves were relocated. The families took what they could carry and left. Everything else went under. But here is what makes Delta worth seeking out. In drought years, when the reservoir drops far enough, the town comes back. Foundations break the surface. Old roadbeds reappear. Stone walls emerge from the shallows before the water rises and takes them back down. Delta keeps trying to resurface, like a place that has not quite made its peace with what happened to it. Most towns on this list stayed where they were put. The next one did something that had almost never been tried before. When the city said the valley was going underwater, the whole town picked itself up and moved. Town 7, Katonah, Westchester County. The Katonah most people know today, the well-preserved Westchester town with the Metro North Station and the pretty Main Street, is not the original. The original is sitting at the bottom of a reservoir about a mile to the south, and most of the people living in the current town have no idea. When New York City needed the valley for its Croton watershed system, instead of simply condemning everything and watching it flood, something genuinely unusual happened. They moved the town, building by building. Between 1895 and 1897, 63 houses were loaded onto rollers and physically pulled across the landscape to the new site on higher ground. The church went, the school went, the commercial buildings went. By the time the valley flooded in 1906, old Katonah had already been reassembled up the hill, looking for all the world like it had always been exactly where it was. The ghost town hid in plain sight, so completely hidden that the people living on top of its story never noticed it was there. The last town on this list has been hiding in plain sight even longer. You can see it from the shore, you just cannot get to it. Town 8, North Brother Island, New York City. You can see it from the Bronx, just across the East River. A small green island, completely overgrown, completely inaccessible. 20 acres of forest swallowing the ruins of a hospital complex that held, over its history, smallpox patients, disaster survivors, and one woman who spent 23 years there completely alone and never left. Riverside Hospital opened on North Brother Island in the 1850s to keep quarantine patients away from the mainland. In 1904, the steamship General Slocum caught fire in the East River and was beached on the island's shores. Over 1,000 people died, mostly women and children from a German immigrant community on the Lower East Side heading to a church picnic. It remains one of the deadliest disasters in New York City history. Then there was Mary Mallon, Typhoid Mary, an Irish immigrant cook who carried typhoid fever without symptoms and genuinely refused to believe she was making people sick. In 1915, she was forcibly quarantined on the island. She lived there alone in a small cottage for 23 years. She died there in 1938. She never left. The hospital closed in 1963. Today, cormorants nest in the ruins of the old wards. No humans are allowed in. It sits in the middle of one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. Completely wild, completely sealed, visible to millions of people every single day who have absolutely no idea what they are looking at. 8 towns. Flooded, relocated, abandoned, dissolved by a vote of 13-1, left to the birds. And honestly, New York is just one state. Every state in this country has places like this. Valleys that got sacrificed, communities that got erased, stories that never made it into any textbook because the people who lived them were too busy surviving to write them down. Most people just never go looking. How many more do you think are out there, in places you thought you already knew? The answer is almost always more than you expect. If you want to keep finding them, make sure you are subscribed. We do this every week.